Last week, we went over the Cristero War. It got pretty intense and heavy. So, this week we're going to go over the, why are the lights red again? That's never a good sign. What are we going over? The Cristero War again? Yes, in a way. We're going to talk about a priest who chose to sneak into Mexico, where being a priest was not only illegal, but punishable by death. And yes, I said that correctly. He snuck into Mexico, not out. Well, he snuck out and then back in. But we'll get into that. But before we go into that story, I highly recommend that if you haven't watched the video on the Cristero War, that you go ahead and do that. I'll link to it in the description and put that card there if you can see it. Go watch it and I'll wait right here for you. So, while we're waiting for them, the rest of you can go click on that like button and share this video. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And go check out journeytosainthood.com. All right, is everybody back? Let's talk about Blessed Miguel Pro. Miguel Pro was born on January 13th, 1891. He was quite the practical joker, to the point where he would often take it way too far and become injured or ill. I love the way Catholic Online describes him. It says, he was intensely spiritual and equally intense and high mischievousness, frequently exasperating his family with his humor and practical jokes. It also goes on to say, after one of these jokes, he lost consciousness. What was he doing? And when he regained it, he popped up and asked for cocol, which is a sweet bread that was a favorite of this crazy child. Cocol, remember that. That comes back later. Despite rising anti-Catholicism among those in power in Mexico, Miguel felt the call of his vocation to priesthood. He joined the Jesuits to start his studies. But a revolution was going on in Mexico, and as I said, anti-Catholicism was rising. Miguel had to make a choice: stay at home and be arrested, or leave the country to continue his formation. He ended up fleeing to the United States and then continued his studies in Spain and Belgium. Then he became sick. His stomach, he was in agonizing pain. He couldn't even digest food. He was physically weak and lost dangerous amounts of weight. He had to undergo surgeries, and this was before antibiotics, making the procedure highly dangerous. It was extremely painful, and he had long, excruciating recoveries. The doctors didn't think he would live. No one thought he would even make it long enough to be ordained. But Miguel insisted on continuing his formation. His joy and laughter was not depleted. He continued to make jokes, often about his own condition. He did make it to his ordination, but the pain never left him. For the remainder of his life, he lived in constant pain, had to avoid many foods, tired easily, and would never regain his strength fully. So, it's time to give this newly ordained, very ill priest a quiet job that doesn't take a lot of physical stress, right? Or, and hear me out, we could send him to what is likely the most dangerous place for a priest at the time: back to Mexico. In fairness, Father Miguel asked permission to return, and he was sent specifically for a Clandestine Ministry. It was a Mexican Mission Impossible. Father Miguel snuck back into Mexico to shepherd the sheep now in hiding. At this point, Calles, the dictator of the country, had cracked down on clergy. Churches had been seized by the state, worship had gone underground, and the battle cry, Viva Cristo Rey, echoed everywhere. This was a place where priests were being hunted down and executed. Father Miguel's practical joke antics from earlier were suddenly actually coming in useful. He didn't sneak around the federalists by lurking in the shadows with his eyes darting around. No. He rode on a bike right out in the open. Yep. Ride a bike and the police won't bother you. Why? Because priests don't ride bikes, right? He walked with confidence among the Federalists, often smiling and cracking jokes. He showed no fear and therefore drew no suspicion. When speaking of him, Catholics would use the codename Coco to keep his identity safe if any communication was intercepted. Yes, that sweetbread that Father Miguel loved became his secret code name. He would wear disguises so elaborate, his own friends sometimes didn't recognize him. His sense of humor had not depleted, and he was smiling right under the noses of his hunters while being hunted. Patrick Madrid tells a story of one of Father Miguel's escapes that I just love. I can't quite do the story justice, so I'll let Patrick take this one, and we'll leave a link in the description to this talk. I highly recommend it. Check to see if your parish has access to Formed, and if so, definitely go check it out.
He was very close to being captured when the house that he was in celebrating Mass, he had just finished celebrating Mass, somebody informed, and the house was surrounded by police, and he was able at the very last minute to sneak out. And this will show you a little bit of his type of personality. He went to some other house nearby and put on his police inspector's uniform, and he came back and he started shouting at them, "How come you haven't found that priest yet?" And he told them he was going to report them if they didn't get busy and find that priest. And then he walked away smoking a cigar.
That is such a great story. And it really does show the type of person that Father Miguel was. But Father Miguel's luck would eventually run out. A failed assassination attempt on Calles' predecessor was blamed on Father Miguel. He had nothing to do with it, but he wasn't given a defense, wasn't given a trial, didn't get to go before a judge. He was just marched out onto the street. The orders were to make a public spectacle of the priest, show the people what would happen if they resisted the Federalists. They even hired photographers to take pictures of the man begging for his life. But instead, Father Miguel refused the blindfold from the firing squad. He took a moment to kneel in prayer. Then he stood to face his executioners. He forgave them, and then he stretched out his arms, one hand clutching a crucifix, and the other a rosary. He smiled, and then proclaimed, Viva Cristo Rey. and the Federalists opened fire. Still, the government had their pictures. It was ordered that the state-run newspapers publish the images of Father Miguel's execution. Let the people see what exactly would happen if you dared to defy them. That should settle them down. What? They're stronger than ever? The plan backfired? Well, yeah. Father Miguel was deeply loved by the Mexican people, and seeing the images of his execution and martyr angered them. Morale didn't fall among the Catholics fighting to defend their faith. It rose. His image became an instant symbol of heroic faith. They carried this photo around with them and asked for his intercession. He actually became stronger. Blessed Miguel Pro was a man in pain and under persecution. He chose joy, courage, and forgiveness under the threat of death. He lived in constant danger, in constant pain, and yet he laughed, forgave, and trusted completely in God. His story isn't just history. It's a reminder that real courage isn't the absence of fear, but the choice to live faithfully, joyfully, and boldly for God. Today, we can carry a little of that courage with us and never be afraid to proclaim Christ as King. If you've gotten this far and still haven't watched my video on the Cristero War, what are you waiting for? This video and next week's will make a lot more sense with the information in that video. So just go watch it. Blessed Miguel Pro, pray for us. And Viva Cristo Rey!